The Sultan was dead. The body was still warm, and the French were 50 miles away. Shajar al-Durr stood in the riverside palace at al-Mansura and made the calculation that would define her life. If the army learned that al-Salih Ayyub was gone, the chain of command would shatter. Emirs would begin positioning themselves for the succession. Mameluke factions would split. The soldiers in the field, already exhausted, already afraid, would lose the one thing holding them together: the belief that someone was in charge. And the Crusaders, who had captured the port of Damietta without a fight because the Egyptian garrison had panicked and fled, would march straight to Cairo. So she lied. She told only two people: Fakhr al-Din ibn al-Sheikh, the commander of the Egyptian army, and Jamal al-Din Muhsin, the chief eunuch. The three of them agreed on a plan that was breathtaking in its audacity and terrifying in its fragility. The Sultan's body was wrapped, placed in a coffin, and transported by boat under cover of darkness to the castle on Al-Roda Island in the Nile. No funeral was held. No announcement was made. As far as Egypt knew, the Sultan was gravely ill but alive. Then the performance began. Every day, food was prepared and carried to the Sultan's tent, meals for a man who would never eat again. Servants entered and exited on schedule. Music played outside the tent, as it always did when the Sultan was resting. When official documents needed the Sultan's seal, the servant Suhail, whose ability to forge al-Salih's handwriting Shajar had cultivated for exactly this kind of moment, produced decrees that no one could distinguish from the real thing. Orders went out in the Sultan's name. Promotions were granted. Military dispositions were confirmed. The machine of state continued to function because everyone believed the hand on the lever was still alive. This deception lasted 3 months, 90 days of maintaining a fiction while a foreign army advanced through the Delta. 90 days of managing generals, feeding soldiers, monitoring supply lines, and keeping every ambitious emir in the kingdom from realizing that the throne was empty. It was not just a lie, it was a full-time government operation run by a woman who, on paper, held no official position at all. Meanwhile, a messenger was dispatched to Hisn Khalifa to summon al-Muazzam Turan Shah, al-Salih's son from another woman. He was the legitimate heir, but Hisn Khalifa was in southeastern Turkey, weeks of travel away. Until he arrived, there was no sultan. There was only Shajar al-Durr, a dead man's tent, and 40,000 Frenchmen moving south. The crisis came in February 1250. The Crusader army, led by King Louis IX's brother, Robert of Artois, crossed the canal at Ashmum and launched a surprise attack on the Egyptian camp at Jidela, just 2 miles from al-Mansura. Fakhr al-Din was killed in the assault, the army's top commander gone in minutes. The Crusader vanguard, drunk on momentum, charged straight into the town of al-Mansura itself. This was the moment that should have ended everything. The commanding general was dead, the Sultan was dead, the heir was weeks away, and European army was inside the walls. Shajar al-Durr agreed to a plan proposed by the Mamluk commander Baibars: let the Crusaders into the town, then close the gates behind them and turn the streets into a killing ground. It was a trap that required nerve, timing, and the willingness to sacrifice the town itself. The gamble worked. Robert of Artois and his knights were surrounded and annihilated inside al-Mansura.
nearly 1,500 Crusaders were killed. Robert himself died in the fighting, his body found days later in a canal. The townspeople, civilians, merchants, women fought alongside the Mamluks in the streets. Al-Mansura held. But the war was not over. Louis IX still had a massive army, and for weeks the two forces faced each other across the waterways of the Delta in a grinding stalemate. Disease swept through the French camp, supply lines frayed, and then, in late February, Turan Shah finally arrived from the north and was enthroned at Al-Salihia. With his arrival, Shajar al-Durr publicly announced what she had hidden for 3 months. The Sultan was dead. The fiction was no longer necessary. The heir was here. On April 6, 1250, the Egyptian army destroyed the Crusaders at the Battle of Ferriscourt. It was total. Louis IX himself was captured, the King of France, taken prisoner on a battlefield in the Nile Delta. It was a humiliation that would echo across Europe for decades. And then came the part no one had planned for. Turan Shah turned out to be a disaster. He was arrogant, ungrateful, and dangerously stupid. He began replacing his father's officials with his own followers from his and Kaifa, men who had not fought in the war and had no loyalty to the Mamluks who had actually won it. He drank heavily. When drunk, he drew his sword and slashed at candles, calling out the names of Mamluk commanders and saying, "This is what I will do to the Bahriya." He demanded that Shajar al-Durr surrender the wealth and jewels of his dead father. He sent threatening messages to the woman who had held his kingdom together while he sat in a fortress 1,000 miles away. Shajar complained to the Mamluks. Faris al-Din Akhtai, the Mamluk leader, was already furious. Turan Shah had promised him a promotion that never came. On May 2, 1250, Baibars and a group of Mamluk soldiers attacked Turan Shah at Ferriscourt. He was stabbed, chased to the river, and finished off on the bank of the Nile. He had been Sultan for less than 3 months. He was the last Ayyubid to sit on the throne of Egypt. What happened next had no precedent. The Mamluk emirs gathered in the royal tent and made a decision that broke every rule of Islamic political tradition. They offered the throne to Shajar al-Durr, not as regent, not as placeholder, as sultan. She accepted.
Coins were minted. The inscription read, Al-Mustasimiya As-Salihia Malikat al-Muslimin, Queen of the Muslims. The Friday khutbah was read in her name. Official decrees bore her signature. She negotiated directly with Queen Margaret of Provence, Louis IX's wife, for the release of the French king. 2 queens, 1 Muslim and 1 Christian, settling the terms that ended the Seventh Crusade. Louis paid an enormous ransom, surrendered Damietta, and sailed to Acre with 12,000 freed prisoners. The crusade was over. Egypt had won. And at the center of that victory sat a woman who had been purchased as a child for the price of a diplomatic gesture. For 80 days she ruled. Only 2 gold coins bearing her name survive today. But for 80 days, every mosque in Egypt spoke her name as sovereign, and every decree that left the citadel carried her authority. Then Baghdad answered. The Abbasid Caliph al-Mustasim, the nominal spiritual leader of Sunni Islam, whose recognition was required for any sultan to claim full legitimacy, refused to acknowledge her. His message to Cairo was blunt and humiliating. If you have no men left, tell us and we will send you one. The Syrian Ayyubid princes echoed the rejection. A woman on the throne was, in their view, an abomination, a violation of the natural order
that no military victory could justify. The Mamluks had a choice: fight the entire Islamic world over the gender of their ruler, or find a compromise. They chose the compromise. Shajar al-Durr married Izz al-Din Aybak, one of al-Salih's Mamluks, and formally abdicated in his favor. Aybak became sultan. The caliph was appeased. The Syrian princes were mollified. But everyone in Cairo understood the truth. Aybak sat on the throne. Shajar al-Durr held the power. The arrangement worked, for now. The question was how long a puppet could tolerate his strings, and how long a puppeteer could keep pretending the puppet was real.
For 7 years, Shajar al-Durr governed Egypt from behind a sultan she had made. It was an arrangement built on a contradiction, and contradictions in politics have expiration dates. On paper, Izz al-Din Aybak was the ruler. His name appeared on coins. His titles were spoken in the khutbah. Foreign ambassadors addressed him. But the real decisions, the treasury, the appointments, the military strategy, passed through Shajar. She controlled access to information, managed the relationships with key emirs, and kept the machinery of state running with the same invisible efficiency she had perfected during the 3 months when the previous sultan was a corpse in a boat. Aybak knew this. The emirs knew this. Everyone in Cairo knew this. And for a while, it worked, because Aybak owed his throne entirely to the woman who had placed him on it and the Mamluks who had agreed to the arrangement. But Aybak was not a man content to be owned. He had been a Mamluk, one who is owned, and he had been freed. The entire arc of his life was a movement away from being controlled by someone else. Now he found himself sultan in name and subordinate in fact, married to a woman who concealed state affairs from him, prevented him from visiting his first wife, and made it clear that his role was to sit, sign, and be silent. The resentment built slowly, like pressure behind a dam. The external threats gave Aybak temporary reasons to tolerate the arrangement. The Ayyubid princes in Syria refused to accept the Mamluk takeover and launched armed conflicts. The Caliph in Baghdad, preoccupied with the Mongol armies that were creeping closer to his capital, mediated from a distance but offered no real support. Rebellions broke out in Upper Egypt. Through it all, Shajar and Aybak worked together, or at least worked in the same direction, because the alternative was destruction. But as the external threats receded, the internal ones grew. Aybak began to act independently. His first move was against the very Mamluks who had made him sultan. Faris al-Din Aktai, the Mamluk leader who had been instrumental in both the murder of Turan Shah and the elevation of Shajar, had grown too powerful. Aybak had him assassinated. The killing sent a shockwave through the Mamluk ranks. Baibars, Kalirwan, and dozens of other senior Mamluks fled Egypt for Syria, where they joined the Ayyubid camp. In one stroke, Aybak had eliminated his most dangerous internal rival and driven out the faction most loyal to Shajar al-Durr. The men who had made her sultan were gone. The man she had made sultan was turning against her. Now consider this from Shajar's position. She was a woman whose power depended on a network, and that network was being dismantled, node by node, by the very person she had elevated. The chief eunuch who had once answered to her now answered to Aybak. The Mamluk commanders who had supported her were in exile. The treasury she had once controlled was being redirected.
She was watching her own architecture of power being taken apart from the inside by a man using the authority she had given him to destroy the authority she had kept. This is not simply a story about jealousy or marital conflict, though the chronicles often frame it that way. It is a story about a structural impossibility. Shajar's power had never been institutional. It had never been formalized, codified, or protected by law. It was personal. It depended on relationships, on information control, on the willingness of powerful men to defer to her judgment. The moment those men were removed or replaced, the power evaporated. She had built a government on trust. Aybak was replacing it with one built on force. And force, in the Mamluk world, always won.
The breaking point came in 1257. Aybak announced his intention to marry the daughter of Badr al-Din Lulu, the powerful Ayyubid emir of Mosul. It was a political marriage, an alliance designed to strengthen his position against the Mamluks who had fled to Syria. But for Shajar, it was something more. It was proof that Aybak no longer needed her. A new wife from a powerful family would give him a new network, a new source of legitimacy, and a new reason to discard the old one. Badr al-Din Lulu made things worse by sending Aybak a warning. Shajar al-Durr had been in secret contact with the Ayyubid prince an-Nasir Yusuf in Damascus. According to the historian al-Makrizi, she had sent an-Nasir a gift and a message offering to kill Aybak, marry him instead, and make him Sultan of Egypt. Whether this was true or a fabrication designed to accelerate the break, the effect was the same. Aybak now had reason to believe his wife was plotting his murder, and he was not wrong. On an evening in April 1257, Aybak came to the citadel after a game of polo. He went to bathe. The bathhouse, that space where the harem's rules of vulnerability and honesty had always intersected, became the site of the act that would end everything. While Aybak stood in the water, servants attacked him. He cried out for help. He called Shajar's name. According to al-Makrizi, she hesitated. She ordered the servants to stop. But one of them, a man named Muhsin al-Jodri, shouted back, "If we let him go, he will kill both you and us." The servants finished what they had started. Aybak was dead. He had ruled Egypt for 7 years. Shajar al-Durr moved fast. She sent Aybak's signet ring to a senior emir, Izz al-Din al-Halabi, offering him the throne. He refused. She sent word to another commander. He also refused. No one wanted to inherit a murder. By morning, the servants had been seized and tortured. They confessed. The Muizia, Aybak's personal Mamluks, led by the commander Qutuz, surrounded the citadel. Shajar was arrested and taken to the Red Tower. The woman who had once held Egypt together with forged documents and invisible authority was now a prisoner in a fortress she had once commanded. The Mamluks who had supported her were in Syria. The Mamluks who now controlled Cairo owed their loyalty to the man she had just killed. There was no network left, no allies, no leverage. She had played the game of the Mamluk system, a system where power was taken by force and held by cunning, and she had played it as well as anyone who ever lived. But the system had one rule she could never overcome. It had been written into its architecture from the beginning, encoded in the caliph's contempt, in Aybak's resentment, in the silence of every emir who refused her ring. The rule was simple. A woman could wield power, but she could never own it. She could operate the machine, but she could never be the machine. And the moment the machine decided it no longer needed her,
There was nothing, no intelligence, no network, no cunning that could save her. The system she had used to rise was the same system that would destroy her. That was not irony. That was design. Aybak's first wife had waited 7 years. Her name is largely lost to history. The chronicles refer to her simply as Ali, the mother of Ali, after her son al-Mansur Ali, whom the Muizziya Mamluks installed as the new sultan after his father's murder. She had been pushed aside when Aybak married Shajar al-Durr. She had been forbidden from seeing her own husband. She had watched from the margins as a former slave ruled Egypt in everything but name. Now, with Shajar al-Durr stripped of power and locked in the Red Tower, Ali's moment arrived. She sent her slave women to the tower. What followed was not an execution. It was an act of intimate, methodical humiliation designed to mirror, invert, and erase every claim to dignity that Shajar al-Durr had ever made. They beat her with wooden clogs, bakabik, the heavy wooden shoes worn by bathhouse servants. Not blades, not the instruments of a warrior's death. Clogs. It was the weapon of slave women, chosen deliberately to say, "You are not a sultan, you are not a queen, you are what you always were." The beating continued until she was dead. Then they stripped her body. Then they dragged her by the feet to the top of the citadel wall, the same fortress from which she had once governed an empire, and threw her over. Her naked body landed in the dry moat below. It lay there for 3 days. No one claimed it. No one covered it. According to Ibn Iyas, on the 3rd night, a group from the city came to the moat, not to bury her, but to take the silk cloth that was still wrapped around her waist because it was stitched with pearls and still carried the scent of musk. Pearls. Even in death, even in the dirt, the name followed her. Tree of pearls, lying in the dust, stripped of everything except the thing that drew the last scavengers.
Eventually, the sources do not say exactly when or by whom, her remains were gathered and placed in the mausoleum she had built for herself sometime during the years of her power. The tomb on Al-Khalifa Street. The pearl tree in the mihrab. The small, quiet room where this story began. But the story did not end in the moat. That is the part the chronicles almost missed, because they were written by men who saw her death as a cautionary tale about the dangers of female ambition. They recorded her fall in vivid detail, and then moved on to the next sultan, the next war, the next succession crisis. What they failed to see, or refused to see, was the scale of what she had set in motion. Shajar al-Durr ruled for 80 days. The Mamluk dynasty she founded ruled for 267 years. The Mamluk Sultanate that emerged from the chaos of 1250 would become the most powerful state in the Middle East and one of the most consequential in world history. In 1260, just 3 years after Shajar's death, a Mamluk army under the command of Qutuz and Baibars met the Mongol horde at Ain Jalut in the Jezreel Valley of modern-day Israel. The Mongols, who had sacked Baghdad and destroyed the Abbasid Caliphate just 2 years earlier, who had swept across Persia and Syria like a natural disaster, were defeated. Ain Jalut was the first major battle the Mongol Empire ever lost. It was the moment the Mongol westward expansion stopped, and it was fought by an army built on the system that Shajar al-Durr had preserved when she held Egypt together during the Seventh Crusade. Baibars,
The same Baibars who had been a slave alongside Shajar in the fortress of Kerak, who had devised the trap that destroyed the Crusaders at Al-Mansura, who had killed Turan Shah with his own hands, became Sultan shortly after Ain Jalut. Under his rule, the Mamluks systematically dismantled every remaining Crusader stronghold in the Levant. Acre fell in 1291. The Crusader era in the Middle East was over. 2 centuries of European military presence ended by the heirs of the state Shajar al-Durr had founded during the most desperate week of her life.
The Mamluks also rebuilt the Abbasid Caliphate, or rather created a puppet version of it in Cairo, installing a descendant of the Baghdad caliphs as a figurehead who provided religious legitimacy without political interference. The institution that had rejected Shajar for being a woman was now a tool in the hands of the dynasty she had created. History has a taste for that kind of correction. Beyond the battlefield, Shajar al-Durr left a mark that visitors to Cairo can still see today if they know where to look. When she added a tomb to her first husband's madrasa, the Salihia, on the main street of Fatimid Cairo, she created something new in Islamic architecture, the combination of a religious school and a royal mausoleum in a single complex. Before Shajar, madrasas were places of learning, tombs were places of memory. She fused the two, creating a monument that was simultaneously charitable and commemorative, pious and political. The innovation was so effective that it became the standard for every major Mamluk building project that followed. The great mosque madrasa tomb complexes that define Cairo's medieval skyline, Sultan Hassan, Kalawun, Barkuk, all trace their architectural DNA back to the precedent she set. She did not just found a dynasty, she founded an aesthetic. And then there is the folklore. In the Sirat al-Zahir Baibars, the epic folk romance composed during the early Mamluk era, a sprawling saga of thousands of pages that blends history and legend, Shajar al-Durr appears as a character named Fatma Shajarat al-Durr. In the tale, she is not a slave, but a princess, the daughter of the Caliph of Baghdad, who was given Egypt as her personal domain. She loved Baibars like a son. She killed Ibak not with servants in a bathhouse, but with a sword, face to face. And she died not beaten with clogs in a tower, but falling from the citadel roof while fleeing her enemies, still running, still fighting, even at the end. The folk memory could not accept the real death. It was too degrading for the woman the people remembered, so they gave her a better one. There is also the dessert, Ali, literally mother of Ali. The name of Ibak's first wife is one of the most popular sweets in Egypt today. A warm bread pudding made with puff pastry, milk, nuts, and raisins. According to Egyptian legend, Ali created the dish to celebrate the killing of Shajar al-Durr and distributed it to the people of Cairo. Whether the story is true or not, the fact that it persists means something. It means that 8 centuries later, the rivalry between these two women is still alive in Egyptian kitchens, still being served warm, still carrying the taste of revenge. What then is the legacy of Shajar al-Durr? The chronicles say she was a cautionary tale. The folklore says she was a hero. The architecture says she was an innovator. The military history says she was the founder of a state that changed the world. And the moat below the citadel says she was a woman who was punished not for failing, but for succeeding in a system that was never designed to let her succeed. Perhaps the most honest summary is the simplest one. She was a slave who became a sultan. She saved Egypt from a crusade. She founded a dynasty. And the world she lived in could not forgive her for any of it.
Her tomb still stands on Al-Khalifa Street. The mihrab still holds the pearl tree, that golden mosaic of a slender trunk with luminous fruit, crafted by Byzantine artists for a Muslim queen who had once been a Kipchak girl with no name. The tree is small, the pearls are quiet, but they have outlasted every sultan, every caliph, and every army that tried to decide what a woman was allowed to become. She ruled for 80 days. The echo has lasted 800 years.